am I to judge others? You want to get tipsy? I'm your gypsy. If I can bring a little happiness into the lives of a couple of lonely plumbers, then I'll be flushed with pride.
Paul Lynde. In the 1970s, this catty comedian was the guilty pleasure of nearly every daytime television viewer in America. As the center star on TV's Hollywood Squares, Lynde could even make a trucker blush with his off-color humor.
I'd almost be ashamed of laughing because what he was saying was so naughty and so outrageous and itchy.
Some of these lines, every time you hear them, you're going to go nuts.
Paul, will anything bring tears? Anything bring tears to a monkey's eyes?
Learning that Tarzan swings both ways.
He was a very handsome, attractive man, you know. I thought so, and I'm a girl.
Paul had no problem charming the pants off the fairer sex, but he preferred a little gentleman company. Too bad Lynde had to keep his preference tucked neatly in the closet.
Paul Lynde was really ahead of his time. I think he was one of the first gay icons on television. Everybody knew he was gay, but he couldn't say it.
You know, the biggest fear I have is going out as Paul Lynde because I don't know who he is.
On this episode of Mysteries and Scandals, we'll examine how living a lie changed Paul from a Hollywood square into a Hollywood drunk.
He seemed to take delight in boozing. He was what they would call vicious. He could be a monster.
He was bizarre. You know, during a commercial, he would attack maybe one of the contestants or somebody, a member of the audience.
We'll also uncover how Paul's weakness for the sauce turned fatal.
Both of them were drinking, and the boy started to fool around on the windowsill, and Paul went over and said, "Don't do that," and grabbed him, and he fell.
And we'll see how Lynde eventually became his own worst enemy.
He couldn't get anybody to take him seriously. Not one network, not one studio would make him a deal. And I think a lot of it was his own doing. I think he had worn out his welcome.
I'm A.J. Benza. Join me as we expose the private torment of television's favorite court jester, Paul Lynde. January 11th, 1982. At about 2:30 a.m., several friends arrived at the Beverly Hills home of comedian Paul Lynde. For years, Lynde was considered one of TV's most far-out funny men, but no one was laughing this morning. Instead of a warm welcome, the friends found Lynde cold and dead, alone in his bed. But just what caused Lynde's death at the age of 55? It appeared that the actor had company the night he died. Journalist Howard Johns.
The person who knows what really happened is the person who left, who fled the scene, who never called the cops, and obviously was terrified of getting involved.
On the bedside table, investigators found a bottle of butyl nitrate, or poppers, a legal stimulant used to heighten sexual pleasure. Michael Musto is a writer for The Village Voice.
It was a liquid. You just breathed in the fumes, and it made your heart race, and it made you kind of sweat, and gave you this rush.
Must have been some rush. Still, it was a strange and sad ending to a life that was, well, strange and sad.
Paul Lynde was born on June 13, 1926, in Mount Vernon, Ohio. Paul was the third of 4 sons, and he also had 2 sisters. Paul idolized his older brother, Corden, and Corden was killed in World War II. It shook him up a lot. It certainly shook his parents up more, both of whom were so grief-stricken by the passing of their oldest son that they both were dead by 1946. I mean, this was a trauma that Paul never recovered from. And I think it also laid the groundwork for his career as a comedian.
After graduating high school, Paul left small-town life for the big city of Chicago.
He enrolled at Northwestern University, where he studied drama, and his classmates included Cloris Leachman and Charlotte Ray.
We were both cast in Twelfth Night. The more I got to know him, the more I found myself laughing, although it was a very naughty sense of humor.
Close friend and classmate Jan Forbes.
We all just met at least every Saturday and most every evening just to see what the day had brought and how much we laughed
together.
In 1948, after earning the Best Student Actor of the Year award at Northwestern, Paul took off for the bright lights of Broadway.
Paul wanted immediately after college to go to New York and be an actor and a comedian and be another Jack Benny, which I think he was.
Paul Lynde jumped, feet first, into New York City and said, I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to become a star.
After struggling for a few years, Paul was cast in the smash stage play New Faces of 1952, which was eventually turned into a movie. Comedienne Phyllis Diller.
He did the funniest bit in that show. He came out on crutches with a lot of bandages, and he had a little piece of cloth. This is all that was left of his wife.
Well, we'd only been tramping on the trail about 4 or 5 hours, and my wife began to complain of her feet. The only shoes she had with her were those high-heeled sling pumps. Well, she just couldn't take it, so we had to leave her there out on the trail. A couple of days later, on the way back, I found this piece of her dress, along with her purse and gloves. And to this day, I don't know what happened to her.
From then on, I was madly in love with Paul Lynde.
But he was thrilled to finally be center stage with a light in his face and people applauding him. And it really turned him on.
But the rising star was weighed down by his insecurities, so Paul found confidence at his local liquor store.
He drank for many reasons that performers drink. One of them was stage fright. He was terribly shy, and the more he drank, the funnier he became. You know, he would become even more and more gregarious, more outgoing, and, you know, the head would start to waggle and the voice would start to come out like this. And
Too bad Paul's recipe for success was also the formula for disaster. Still to come, Paul Lynde nabs a role with TV's favorite witch, but can a touch of Hollywood magic keep Lynde out of trouble with the law? In 1960, 34-year-old comic actor Paul Lynde landed the lead role in the Broadway musical Bye Bye Birdie. The play turned out to be a huge hit, and the folks in Hollywood sat up and took notice. After years of struggling, Paul Lynde was finally on the road to fame and fortune. Actress Kay Ballard.
Bye Bye Birdie was, I think, a great success because of Paul Lynde. When he did that, kids, what's the matter with kids today? I mean, it was fresh and funny.
Kids? Kids! I don't know what's wrong with these kids today. Kids, who can understand anything they say?
In 1962, Paul flew to Hollywood to reprise his role in the movie version of Bye Bye Birdie. Drawn into the glamorous Tinseltown lifestyle, Lynde decided to stay. He made follow-up films, Beach Blanket Bingo and Under the Yum Yum Tree.
You sure got a funny way of getting your kicks.
Paul found a home on the small screen in 1965 when he was cast as Elizabeth Montgomery's snide Uncle Arthur on the TV sitcom Bewitched. Director William Asher.
He had an extraordinary sense of humor. Well, I knew him so well. I loved him. We had great times together. And Elizabeth loved him, too.
But some critics thought Paul was a little too flamboyant.
Paul Lynde was sort of lovably catty. He had a kind of kinky edge to him, and he was very wicked. This was at a time when you couldn't be out of the closet. It just didn't happen. And yet, everybody knew he was gay.
Though Paul made no bones about his sexual preference, he was pretty tight-lipped about a one-night stand that could have done him in.
July of 1965, when Paul Lynde was in San Francisco, he had met a young actor, and they'd gone out bar hopping one night, and evidently they got quite drunk together, and they ended up back at Paul's hotel room.
Both of them were drinking, and the boy started to fool around on the windowsill and wanted to walk on the windowsill, and Paul went over and said, "Don't do that," and grabbed him. And he held on to him, but then he couldn't hold on to him, and he fell.
The guy fell 8 stories to the sidewalk below.
Maybe they quarreled, but you would think if you had a problem, you would go for the door and not the window. Nevertheless, the incident was buried.
Fortunately, Paul's career remained intact, which is more than we can say for his friend. In 1967, Lynde joined the cast of a new game show called Hollywood Squares. For the next 12 years, Lynde remained the show's quick-witted center square. Host Peter Marshal.
You never had to warm up Paul. Just give him a good joke and he was in good shape. His whole thing made me laugh. It just was funny. But a lot of times it wasn't scripted. He would just make something out of nothing.
According to Fred Astaire, his mother wanted him to do it when he was 35, but he refused, and he still hasn't done it. Done what?
Moved out of the house.
But even with 2 hit TV shows, Paul Lynde wanted more. Radio and TV talk show host Joe Franklin.
Down deep with all his fame and being, without question, the most in-demand, most wanted guest on any talk show, on any variety show, he was never happy. In his heart, in his mind, Paul Lynde thought that he was a second banana.
Paul got his chance at top billing in 1972. After Bewitched was canceled, ABC offered the popular comedian his very own sitcom, cleverly titled The Paul Lynde Show.
Well, they never got Paul, never captured the real funny or real good acting. So, unfortunately, that show went down the tubes.
I don't think ABC wanted Paul Lynde. I think they probably thought he was too gay, you know, because the executives must have known. I mean, this man was outrageous.
Guess what it is? It's a baggie.
Paul Lynde was upset when his show was canceled after 1 season. He thought it would be an ongoing thing like Bewitched or like Hollywood Squares. That didn't help his way of life. That was one of the reasons why he drank even more.
Paul Lynde was in pain. Unfortunately, the guy was medicating himself with the wrong prescription. Up next, Lynde languishes in TV's center square, but a couple of outrageous incidents get him thrown off the board for good.
What's the one thing, Paul, the one thing Dear Abby says you should never do in bed?
Point and laugh.
By the mid-1970s, comic actor Paul Lynde decided to revamp his image. Angry over the cancellation of his TV sitcom and burned out by life on Hollywood Squares, Lynde figured a change might do him good.
Well, at this point in Paul's career, he was very much a square, which he didn't want to be. He threw away the sharkskin suits. He started wearing these hippie clothes, love beads, caftans. I think the 70s was Paul Lynde's era. I mean, he got very hip very quickly to the 70s.
Lynde was restless, and for a guy who was already on the edge, that wasn't a good thing.
You could see him getting tired on the show once in a while, bored. He would just be mad, you know, for no reason.
And he was, to a degree, tormented or thwarted over the fact that he felt trapped. He felt trapped or suffering within that middle square.
I think, like a lot of us, we became known from Hollywood Squares. Career-wise, can be a curse.
You know, the biggest fear I have is going out as Paul Lynde because I don't know who he is.
To all outward appearances, Paul Lynde was a happy-go-lucky and totally captivated with life man. But down deep, I guess the opposite. I think that he was much more connected with the world when he was under the influence of alcohol. He seemed to take delight in boozing.
And Paul was always boozing.
We went to the closing night party at Camelot. I'll never forget that. And he got a little tight. And driving home, he got stopped.
So I finally stopped because I was so near being safe home, you know. And this arm leaned in and said, and I looked up and he had a pad out and a pencil and I said, oh, 2 cheeseburgers all the way.
Lynde was busted more than a few times for driving under the influence.
Paul had a drinking problem, yeah, and that was the dark side to his bubbly, upbeat humor, was that he really had a serious drinking problem and became very ugly when drunk. He really berated people, he got nasty. You wouldn't want to be near him in those moments.
Yoo-hoo, sauce person! 3 double martinis and 2 pink ladies.
No one was safe. Even strangers at one of Lynde's favorite restaurants were subject to the actor's wrath.
Paul Lynde arrived expecting his regular table. He stormed up to the table and said, I'm Paul Lynde, and I want that booth. Give me that booth! And he started pulling these people out of the booth that they were sitting in.
You're trash, mister. You hear me? Trash. You can't talk to my friend like that. Don't you raise your voice to me.
All the rage that was pent up in him would come out when he drank. That's why he should have never had a drink.
By the late 70s, Paul's private bitterness began to spill over into his TV work. Fans of Hollywood Squares began to notice the shift in Lynde's attitude.
Even though he would tape 4 or 5 Hollywood Squares in a day, and if he was scheduled to do something else the next day, he would still, in a sense, burn the candle at both ends by doing things at night that would not put him in good form to perform that next day.
Despite Paul's nasty behavior on the set, viewers still tuned in to hear what Paul Lynde would say next.
Can the puppies in a litter come from different daddies?
Why, that bitch.
But I think Paul really pushed the envelope. So there were complaints. I'm sure there were complaints. He actually had to be dragged off the set. He was so out of control.
I can remember some horrific evenings with him, you know. It was not, he should never have had booze.
Straight ahead, Paul Lynde talks himself out of a job and drinks himself into oblivion.
There isn't anybody who comes on the show who doesn't do Paul Lynde.
That's right.
Well, I'll say ridiculous.
In the fall of 1979, TV personality Paul Lynde told the press he was leaving his 12-year gig as the center star in Hollywood Squares to pursue a career in the movies. But the truth was, Lynde got canned from his job for hitting the bottle a little too hard.
I never watch Hollywood Squares anymore. Not without Paul Lynde. I'm sorry. It's gonna make me cry.
The last few years of Lynde's life were not pretty.
He was never happy, I know that. He was often a guest at my home, and he was never happy. He was never a happy man.
All he would tell me was that he wanted to do serious acting. He really and truly considered himself to be a failure. He was obsessed with making a strong comeback, which never happened.
By 1982, the 55-year-old actor was clocking more hours on the bar scene than the TV screen. Paul's friends and family were concerned.
Paul was expected to attend a friend's birthday party on Sunday, January 10. So when Paul didn't show at the birthday party on Sunday night, early Monday morning, 2:30 a.m., his friends decided, you know, we'd better go check on Paul. And when they didn't get an answer at the front door, they were able to force the side window open, and they went in. They found Paul lying in the master bedroom on the bed and was, at that point, obviously dead.
The story went out that Paul Lynde had taken poppers and died of a heart attack, and everyone thought, oh, this has got to be just some out-of-control rumor, but apparently it was true.
Rumor has it Lynde picked someone up at a bar on Saturday night for a little romance back at his place. During the course of the evening, Paul suffered a major heart attack and his companion took off.
Why they didn't call 911 is a mystery. Why they didn't pick up the phone and call the police and say, you know, he's having a heart attack, I don't understand.
A very sad ending to a man who, in a way, had a sad life. The classic sad comedian, and he sounded so sad that last time on the phone. But I loved him. I loved him as a performer and as a friend and as a person.
On the car radio, I heard the news that Paul Lynde had been found dead in his home and had died of a massive heart attack, which saddened me more than I can ever know.
The irony is that Lynde was telling friends that he wanted to get back on track.
At the end of his life, I think he straightened his life out and he gave up drinking, but it was too late.
He had left a message on my service, and I was in Milwaukee, so I called him from Milwaukee. And he said, oh, by the way, Charlotte, I don't drink anymore. I said, Paulie, you don't? He said, no, I don't drink anymore. I said, oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I said, I love you, Polly. And he said, I love you too, Char.
The LA County Medical Examiner later determined that butyl nitrate was not the cause of Lynde's heart attack. The years of heavy drinking and smoking finally just caught up with him.
They had done an autopsy on Paul because he died alone, and they found that his heart was that of an 88-year-old man. It was just too much for all those years, but I certainly loved having him as long as I did. It was a joy.
And I think he'd like to be remembered as somebody whose humor transcended what you might want to make fun of him for. He would counter back by making a zinger, saying that one-liner, that remark, that would totally disarm you, and you would just have to love him. And suddenly he wasn't an oddity anymore. He was a hilarious comedian.
He was original, and I loved him. In spite of it all, he made me laugh harder than anybody. Paul, wherever you are, oh.
Paul Lynde hungered for fame and got it. He also hungered for happiness, but never quite found what he was looking for. I'm A.J. Benza. Join me the next time we meet in a state of mind called Hollywood.
According to the book, An Encyclopedia of Fairies, who's generally better looking, a fairy or a pixie?
Looks aren't everything.
Well, I'll go for the fairy.